and welcome to this edition of World at War. I am your host, Jyotsna Kumar. Close to 9 months of Israel-Gaza war has resulted in deaths of more than 37,000 Palestinians. At least 85,000 have been wounded. Most of the enclaves flattened, and nearly the entire 2.3 million Gazan population has been uprooted from their homes and are now besieged with a starvation crisis. All this in the name of eliminating Hamas, the armed group that governs the besieged enclave and perpetrators of the October 7th cross-border attack into southern Israel, in which some 1,200 Israelis were killed and 250 taken hostage. 120 of these hostages are still being held by Hamas. But how close is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to achieving the stated goal of eliminating Hamas's military and governing capabilities in the Palestinian territory? Compounding the problem for Tel Aviv is the belligerence of Houthis and Hezbollah, who have stood staunchly with the Palestinians. Our next report explores more.
In a rare public admission that has exposed a widening rift between Israel's political and army leadership, the Israeli Army's chief spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, questioned the stated goal of eliminating the Hamas militant group.
Hamas is an idea. Whoever thinks we can eliminate Hamas is wrong. I'm not referring to the alternatives. The political echelon has to decide and the Israel Defense Forces will implement. But this business of destroying Hamas, making Hamas disappear, it's simply throwing sand in the eyes of the public. If we don't bring something else to Gaza, then at the end of the day, we will get Hamas.
The rare candid moment came during an interview to Israel's Channel 13 broadcaster on 19th of June. Reportedly, Netanyahu's office was left fuming at Hagari's remarks questioning the stated goal. And then it quickly reiterated its commitment to Hamas's destruction.
We are winning. We are being successful. We're taking them apart. Their final stronghold in Rafah is being taken apart systematically, slowly, with intelligence, house by house, tunnel by tunnel, home by home. We're taking them apart and we will win.
This undermining of Netanyahu's doctrine is a fresh challenge for him, following the withdrawal of Benny Gantz, a former military chief and centrist lawmaker from Netanyahu's war cabinet earlier this month, citing frustration over Prime Minister's conduct of the war. Additionally, there have already been open signs of discontent over the handling of the war by Netanyahu's government. Months of internationally mediated ceasefire talks, including a proposal floated by the US President Joe Biden, have stalled. And earlier this week, Netanyahu was miffed with the army's decision to declare a tactical pause in the southern Gaza city of Rafah in a bid to help supply humanitarian aid to the besieged territory. Hezbollah, a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and militant group, has been trading fire with Israel since the Israel-Gaza war erupted on the 7th of October 2023. Hezbollah's chief Hassan Nasrallah issued a threat on Wednesday that nowhere in Israel would be safe if a full-fledged war breaks out between the two arch-enemies. For the first time, Nasrallah also threatened European Union member Cyprus, with which it has cordial relations, alleging that it has been allowing Israel to use its airports and bases for military exercises.
The Cypriot government must be warned that opening Cypriot airports and bases for the Israeli enemy to target Lebanon means that the Cypriot government has become part of the war, and the resistance, Hezbollah, will deal with it as part of the war.
Not known to offer any land or base facilities to the Israeli military, Cyprus has in the past allowed Israel to use its vast airspace to occasionally conduct air drills, but never during a time of war. The same day, Cypriot president denied the allegations leveled by Hezbollah chief.
The Republic of Cyprus is not involved in any way in the hostilities. The Republic of Cyprus is not part of the problem. It is part of the solution, and our role as it was manifested, for example, through the humanitarian corridor, is recognized not only by the Arab world, but by the entire international community.
The next day, Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis, who have targeted Israeli-owned, flagged or operated ships heading to the Israeli ports since last November, released a video showing a 12th June attack on the Greek-owned MV Tutor coal carrier in the Red Sea. Houthis, not unlike Hezbollah, say that these attacks are in support with the Palestinians in Gaza. Though Israel's war efforts initially enjoyed broad public support, recent months have been marked with growing discontent.
We have to replace this evil government. This is our time. There are 120 hostages still in Gaza. We have to replace the government. This is our only way to get them back and to get Israel back, the country that we love so much. We have to keep on fighting. We have to keep the protests going until we get Israel back.
With the war now in its 9th month, frustration has been mounting with no let-up or clear end or post-war plan in sight. Increasingly, it appears that embattled Netanyahu is playing for time. The fear is the fire he is stoking might end up with the whole region in flames.
The People's Liberation Army is the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party and the military of the People's Republic of China. One of the largest military forces in the world, the People's Liberation Army is led by the Central Military Commission, its top decision-making body whose chairman serves as the commander-in-chief. What happens when the supreme leader himself casts aspersions on an institution, calling it corrupt? The Chinese President, Xi Jinping, who is also the chairman of the Central Military Commission, besides holding the post of General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, said that there were deep-seated problems in the Chinese military's politics, ideology, work style, and discipline. The statement came at a military political work conference initiated by Xi himself that was held in Yan'an of northwest China's Shanxi province from 16th to 19th of June. What prompted the Chinese president to underscore the significance of enhancing political loyalty in the military in the new era besides the ramifications of this chiding? Our next report explores more.
Addressing the top brass of the People's Liberation Army on Monday in Yan'an, Chinese President Xi Jinping did not mince his words. He said that the PLA must show absolute loyalty to the Communist Party and that there can be no room for corruption in the military. State media quoted him as saying, "We must make it clear that the barrels of guns must always be in the hands of those who are loyal and dependable to the party. And we must make it clear that there is no place for any corrupt elements in the military." The admonishment assumed significance considering it came days before next month's third plenum of the Central Committee of the Communist Party. The third plenum is expected to lay out China's reform and economic priorities for the next few years. Xi's speech at the conference, covering a wide range of issues from global geopolitical challenges to the PLA's modernization, mirrored a similar one he delivered a decade ago in Kutia in the Fasher province. That momentous speech heralded an overhaul of the PLA and accelerated its modernization drive. The 2014 Extended Political Work Conference echoed the 1929 meeting held in the same place by Mao Zedong, during which the Communist Party established the principle of the party commands the gun. Singling out the top brass this time, she added that they must eliminate hotbeds and conditions that breed corruption, though he refrained from mentioning any individuals in his speech. Dozens of senior PLA officials have been sacked in a sweeping anti-corruption purge since last year. Noteworthy was the removal of former Defense Minister Li Shangfu in October last year. Till date, the reason for his abrupt removal has not been announced. 9 senior generals, including top commanders of the PLA Rocket Force, the former Air Force commander, and a few Central Military Commission officials, were disqualified from their posts in the National People's Congress last December. In addition to the 9 generals, At least 4 aerospace defense industry executives have been removed from the national legislative body till date. Considering the military has been one of the main targets of Xi's decade-long anti-corruption campaign, it would be interesting to watch if it provokes a pushback.
The Philippine military accused the Chinese Coast Guard of ramming and then boarding the Filipino boats in a violent confrontation in the contested waters of the South China Sea on the 17th of June. The Philippines' top military commander, General Romeo Bronner, said that the Chinese Coast Guard were armed with swords, spears, and knives in the incident off 2nd Thomas Shoal. Denouncing the Chinese action as piracy, he demanded the return of seized weapons and other equipment, as well as reparations for damaged items. Beijing described the conduct of its personnel as professional and restrained, further adding that they were aiming to block an illegal transportation of supplies. Monday's incident is the latest in a series of escalating confrontation between Chinese and Philippine ships in recent months. Our next report tells you more.
This is the footage released by the Philippine military, which shows a brazen act of aggression by Chinese Coast Guard towards Filipino Navy personnel in the South China Sea. 2 Chinese vessels approached a small Philippine vessel from either side, while another Chinese boat tailed closely behind. Soon after, Chinese Coast Guard personnel from 8 vessels, wielding swords, spears, knives, and a hand axe, boarded the rigid-hulled inflatable Philippine boats. Reportedly, the encircled Philippine personnel used their bare hands to fight off the Chinese Coast Guard. One Filipino soldier lost a thumb when his vessel was rammed.
And so we're deeply concerned about the injuries suffered by this Philippine sailor, obviously wishing him the best in terms of his recovery. But more critically, to your question, this kind of behavior is provocative, it's reckless, it's unnecessary, and it could lead to misunderstandings and miscalculations that could lead to something much bigger and much more violent. It's imperative that the rightful legal maritime claims by the Philippines are respected, by the PRC and by everybody else for that matter.
After visiting the injured soldier, General Bronner said that the Chinese took guns and other equipment, destroyed equipment on board, including the motors, and proceeded to puncture the Philippine boats. The skirmish happened as the Philippine Navy was delivering supplies to Filipino troops stationed in the 2nd Thomas Shoal. A defiant Beijing, though, dismissed the allegations, claiming that its personnel were aiming to block an illegal transportation of supplies.
The Filipinos were absolutely not carrying out the resupply of humanitarian items. Philippine boats not only tried to sneak in building materials, but were also smuggling in military equipment. They also deliberately rammed Chinese boats. In addition, Philippine personnel poured water and threw objects at Chinese administrative staff. These actions clearly escalated tensions on the sea and seriously threatened the safety of Chinese personnel and ships.
2nd Thomas Shoal hosts a tiny Philippine garrison stationed on a deliberately grounded, decrepit warship. The handful of Philippine soldiers stationed there require regular rations. Beijing has routinely attempted to block Philippine resupply missions to the shoal, employing dangerous maneuvers such as shadowing, blocking, and firing water cannons, and instead blames Manila of violating international law.
The Renai Reef is part of China's Nansha Islands. It is Chinese territory. The Philippines intruded into the sea around the reef without seeking China's permission. This violated international law and the spirit of the Code of Conduct for all parties in the South China Sea. It was frankly an unreasonable provocation.
China claims almost the entire South China Sea and has repeatedly sought to assert its sovereignty. But China and Philippines are not the only claimants of this strategic waterway. Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam and Taiwan also have overlapping claims to this major global trade route, believed to be sitting atop rich undersea deposits of oil and natural gas. With both Manila and Beijing accusing each other of being the agent provocateur, the recent escalatory actions have undermined regional peace and stability.
The war in Sudan has raged for more than 14 months between the Sudanese armed forces helmed by Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the powerful paramilitary rapid support forces spearheaded by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Fasher, the provincial capital of North Darfur, is the only state capital of the 5 Darfur states, not under RSF control. Previously a key humanitarian hub, Fasher has emerged as the fiercest battleground recently. The United Nations Security Council on 13th of June called for an immediate halt to the fighting and siege of Fasher by RSF. A few days later, on 18th of June, Sudan accused the United Arab Emirates of fomenting conflict in the country, a charge flatly denied by the Gulf state. UAE as well as Iran have been accused of violating a UN arms embargo by supplying drones to the warring sides in the 14-month civil war which has devastated Sudan. Our next report gives you more details.
Africa's third largest country by size, the Republic of Sudan, has been ravaged by war for 14 months. Long simmering tensions between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary RSF erupted into an all-out war on the 15th of April last year. The trigger was the planned integration of the paramilitary RSF into the regular army, an internationally backed political transition plan. The rivals RSF and the Sudanese military have been battling over control of the country for 14 months. More than 14,000 people have been killed, 33,000 wounded, and 10 million people have been displaced since then. A new front has opened up around the city of Fasher in North Darfur, where, compounding the matters, the population is already on the brink of starvation. Fasher is the last army stronghold in the western Sudan's Darfur region, which was, until recently, relatively unaffected by the fighting. But since mid-April, bombardments and clashes have been reported in the surrounding villages. The city, under siege by the RSF fighters, has witnessed intense fighting between government and paramilitary forces, provoking a humanitarian crisis. On 13th June, the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution prepared by Britain and which received 14 votes in favor, with Russia abstaining, demanding that the RSF halt the siege of Fasher.
The adoption of this resolution sends a clear message. The Council demands that the Rapid Support Forces immediately stop the siege of Fasher and that all sides step back from the brink. An attack on the city would be catastrophic for the 1.5 million people sheltering in the city. We tabled this resolution to help secure a localized ceasefire around Fasher and create the wider conditions to support de-escalation across the country and ultimately save lives.
The city of 1.5 million people gained notoriety about 2 decades ago, when Arab militias, who later formed the RSF, killed up to 300,000 members of black ethnic groups. On 18th June, at a UN Security Council meeting, the Sudanese ambassador to the UN lashed out at the United Arab Emirates, accusing it of sponsoring terrorism by arming RSF.
Whoever wants to create peace in Sudan must first come with pure intentions. And the United Arab Emirates is the state that is sponsoring terrorism. That is a racist kind of terrorism. And this has been proven by the report issued by your own council.
Furthermore, the Sudanese envoy claimed that Khartoum has evidence of the weapon supply and that the Sudanese government will submit a file on UAE actions to the International Criminal Court. The UAE ambassador, in response, labelled Sudan's charge as ludicrous and designed to deviate from grave violations that are happening on the ground.
We see this as a shameful abuse by one of the warring parties of Sudan of this council, using this platform to spread false allegations against the UAE, to distract from the grave violations that are happening on the ground. There will be no military victory or a military settlement of the conflict in Sudan. The only way to settle will be through the negotiating table.
Is Abu Dhabi's financial and military support for the RSF the main reason behind the protracted Sudan war? A UN report published in January had accused several countries of arming the RSF, including the UAE. For peace to prevail in Sudan, arms embargo on Sudan must be respected. External interference must immediately stop, and two warring generals must come to the negotiating table. Till that happens, the fear is that one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history will keep worsening with each passing day.
And that's all we could pack into this edition of World at War. Thanks for watching.